So first up is our longtime friend, longtime presenter is Julia Siemon. Let's give her a big, warm welcome to the stage. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Wow, this is loud. Hi, everyone. So my name is Julia Siemon. I'm a creative here in the city, and here's my website, juliasimon.com, so you can go on there and check out my work. Unfortunately, I did not have a reel for you today, but again, all my work is on the website, so you can, when you get a moment, go back to your laptops or whatever, check it out. So today I'm going to talk about two projects. The first one is this music video that I'm working on with a very talented artist, Avina. So it's her first single and it's her first music video, Daily Dose of Danger. So just I'm directing and doing all the visuals for it. So that's been really great. I've done a shoot that got some really great footage that I have to edit. But it's going to have a lot of different vignettes that deal with kind of, the poison, danger, all that stuff, fun stuff. Very appropriate for Halloween. So the one that I'm going to break down today is how I've done the ropes for that specific vignette. So everything starts off with a reference images. I'm sure from previous presenters, they've talked about it time and time and again. You have to, before you start anything, figure out your idea, start getting references for what you want to execute. So these were my references for the ropes web portion, and these are the style frames. So once you get your references, then it's on to building style frames. So the style frames set up a guide to what your lighting will be, your compositing, so then you can just move on to animation, and everything is just piped right into your layers, and you can just replace them without really having to do too much tweaking. I mean, there's always tweaking, but less so if you figure everything out ahead of time. So fun, doing some hair here, which was pretty fun. Again, lots and lots of ropes for that vignette. And I used a plugin called Ricochet by Rocket Lasso. So that's something I'm going to be talking about. So all of these, again, just style frames. Get your shots in, get all your set up and compositing done. So tools used in making of the style frames. The Siemon 4D ropes tag, very fun. Didn't use it quite as much as the Ricochet plugin. So I will be talking right now. Let's jump into Cinema, and I will talk about the ropes tag, and then I'll follow up with the other one. So let me just go into my Cinema. I have this cute teddy bear here. So my other scenes are super massive, and because they already have animation on them, so it would have taken too long to load and cumbersome to work in. So I'm just gonna use this cute little teddy bear for these. All right, so we're gonna do the Siemon 4D ropes tags. Basically have him kind of executing kind of similar to this frame here. Just have him hanging on the ropes dynamically, which will be super fun. So everything starts with a spline. So let's use our pen tool here. You don't really have to be precise with it, just put some points down that you can fix later. I use coordinates. Let's select that. Let's coordinates, just zero out your properties. I know some people just like to select both of them and scale them down. I use the coordinates method. So that seems about right. Let's use go back to the object select, move it. Actually, yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to line it up a little bit. You don't have to be too precise. The technique that we're going to use it will find the points it needs, but just, to be on the safe side, I guess. It's about right. We'll go with this. So let's name this. We'll name this rope A. And then we're going to add a tag. So go to simulation tags, add our rope tag here. And then we're going to go to everything's good. Oh, one more thing. Because it is a dynamic object or dynamic tag, we should also make our objects that are going to be affected by the ropes dynamic as well, and that is just by going to simulation tags and adding a cloth to it. So bandiness, I always like to just start off with making it 0. And now for the fun part, we're just gonna, we have to connect, basically we have to first apply a belt. So over here, we're going, you know what, I'm just gonna scale this up. So over here, we need to point it so like it doesn't just fall down. So right now, if I play this, the whole thing will just fall. So we just have to do a few things. For instance, here we have to belt this, and here we have to connect it. So let's do that now. So have this point selected, and we're going to create a null actually to belt it to. So it needs to have an object to get belted. Very similar to the previous versions of Cinema 4D. So somewhere around there, I think. Let's go here. Something like that. That looks about right. All right. Also rename. Always name rope a belt. Oops. Always name your objects belt. See, I'm really nervous, so I'm messing this up a little bit, but okay. And select your point here. Go into your rope spline. Right-click simulation tags. Find your rope belt. And just drag your null into the object place and just say set. And the moment you do that, you will have this circle that appears that says it's working. So if you don't have that, then you might need to check something, but here it's working, so it's now set. It's belted, so if we could just go down, then you can see it's staying put. Our bear is still falling, but that's okay. We're going to fix that now. So we go back again. Let's select our points, the other point now, because that's the one that we're going to use to connect it to the bear. Let's find that. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use a connect a connect tag. So again, simulation tags. Oop. Connector. Okay. So for this one, all we have to do is drop our, actually we don't have to do anything, we just have to say create. And it did not create it because we need to give it more search radius. So it's going to try to find points within like a certain radius. So let's go up to like 5 and see if it, and now you can see that it found those points. So just make sure that if it doesn't work, like that doesn't mean like it's not working. Just adjust your search radius and it will connect. Cool. So now let's see how that looks like. Oh, it doesn't look like any. Oh, because I have it selected. Let's go. So now it's there. It's just it's a little wobbly, but it's okay. Let's connect the other rope to the other side. So we're just basically going to do the same thing as we just did. Let's go here and select these points. Do the same. Maybe not so long. Oh, that's fine. Another thing we should really do is go into our object here for spline. So that's something that's just important when dealing with splines in general, is change your intermediate points, for instance, to let's say 20, so that you have more bendiness. So there's like some sort of information within the spline to deform it correctly. So that's always very important, and I feel like that gets missed a lot. And I do that frequently too. I forget about it, and I'm like, why is everything so stiff? Okay, so let's do the same thing we just did before. Go into our coordinates, zero out our properties, because that's what whatever, we'll just do that. And select this one, zero this out, maybe make it even. even Steven, like my contractor like to say all the time. All right. So line it up. Again, doesn't have to be precise, but just in that general vicinity is good to have. So that looks about right. Sure, that works. It's a little long, actually, for my taste, so I'm gonna make it a little shorter. All right, belt it. So that's what we gotta do again. So we're gonna rename it belt rope B belt, sure. And we're gonna name this rope B, perfect. Let's go again, simulation tags, rope. And we're also going to go simulation tags, rope belt. And then for this one, we're going to do the same thing we did before. So drop our rope belt into here. Let's see if that worked. I don't know if I got the little circle. I don't think I did. I don't know if I got the circle. Did I get the circle? Well. No, I didn't get the circle. Okay. So I did something wrong. Let's do this again. So I have, well, first of all, let's just turn it into a rope tag. So simulation, rope. And then we'll select our point. So we have our point selected. That's fine. And oh, so yeah, one of those things that you have to remember is it's going to be connected, built it to wherever your object is located. So just remember to put it, nearby to where you want it to be built at. So that was a good lesson. So just remember to do those. So there's like a lot of like little steps to keep track of that sometimes when I'm rushing, I just forget. But again, now it should work. So we have our point. Now it's in the right location, the null. And so we'll go to simulation tags. Let's go rope. That was already done. Wow, I'm really losing it today. Okay. Rope belt. And set. Okay, now we got the circle. Now we're good. Now we can move on to belting that. Not belting, connecting. So let's go here. Let's select our point here. Do the same thing. Simulation, connector, and see if it will connect without having to adjust our radius. So just create, and it did. So we can see it here. It connected the point. So now if we play this down, there's something funky happening here, but we can fix all of that. So the cool thing now actually is when you're using dynamics, a lot of times you have to go into project settings and start changing in simulation, start changing your gravity. So I could do that. So I could go into edit project settings, scene, change my gravity here to like -100. And if I play that down, it's a lot slower, it's a lot smoother. For some reason, this is not connecting perfectly, probably because it was a little far away. But now there's a really cool object for simulate. There is a simulation scene, which I think is excellent because if you want to have like cloth here, and you don't want it to be affected by gravity, but say like you want the teddy bear to be affected by gravity, you can now have the simulation scene that gives you an opportunity to affect each simulation independently, which I think is so great. So you can just drop your simulations into the elements window, and then all of those are going to be affected. Obviously, I don't have like additional So let's just reset this to, I don't have additional elements that need to be affected differently at the moment, but if I did, I would definitely use simulation scene. So like now I can do negative 100 here. And I can also change my scale. I can also change my simulation subsets, all substeps, all like for individual simulations, which is awesome. I'm very excited that that's here. So again, let's make it even smaller actually. So let's make it like negative 50, and it will, be a lot gentler and a lot slower. We still have an issue here, but actually I think my rope, they're both uniform. So that is the rope tag. I might use it for one of the scenes, but just play around with it. There's a lot to learn there. It is very, very powerful, but definitely the simulation scene is probably like one of my favorite new features. So that answers a lot of issues I had in the past. So this is great. Let's jump into now the Ricochet. So this is a plugin from Rocket Lasso. You can go to rocketlasso.com. They got a lot of different plugins. I used Match the Spline also, but mainly used this one. And they also, Chris Schmidt has a lot of really great tutorials on how to use it as well. Like that kind of dives really deep into it. So definitely check it out if you want to, do a lot of spline affected projects. All right. So let's clear this up. So revert to saved. Yeah, why not? Okay. Still using the teddy bear. We're gonna go and start off doing these guys. So these kind of like webby ropes here. They're kind of like tangly and come apart. So this is what I'm going to show you now. Okay, so to keep things nice and neat, I'm going to put everything into a connect object, because there's like a bunch of layers here, so it's nice to just add everything together. Bear, model, sure. And now we're going to go, once you installed your plugin, it will show up here in extensions. So go down to RKT Ricochet, and the cool thing is, so over here you got your window. Click on Ricochet, so you have your objects. You can use an object as a guide. So if I drop this in here and I say hide sources, you can start already seeing it working. And that's really cool. That's not, I'm going to get to that in a later portion, but so for now we're actually going to take the Ricochet out of the bear. So the moment I do that, you're not seeing anything. So right now there's just like a line going a different direction. So we need to point this line towards the bear, because that's what we're going to use this main rope that's going to connect to the bear, and then from there there's going to be all the other ones. So how do we do that? Well, right click, we're going to use a target tag, and we're going to have a null that's going to be driving the target. So just drop the null in there. Now you can see it's bouncing off the bear, and that's not really something we want. So we're just going to go into down here in this window, change it from total length to count, and then go down to 1, because we only want one beam hitting the bear. That seems right. And actually rename. So bear null, very important. Actually, maybe bear null target, because it's a target. And this one's going to be a main line, because that is a main line. Main align. There we go. All right. I'm going to actually drop this down a little bit. So now, how do we add the curve that we had in this frame? So there's a bit of a curve here, not drastic, but still slight. So a few things we have to do, and that's something, like those little steps you have to remember to do, such as enable the spline here, the interpolation of the spline within the ricochet object. So we're going to make it, let's make it Bezier actually, and subdivide it 90. That looks good. And now we're going to use, the cool thing about ricochet is you can use effectors to affect the geometry of it, which is really neat. So we're going to use a plane effector, make that a child, and some things happen. We just have to adjust it a little bit. So we're going to do a null. We're going to put everything under null. This is going to be our main line, null. Drop that into here. And also within the effector itself, we also have to change a few things. So the transformation space should be based on the effector, not the node. And deformer should be point. That's pretty important. You see it jump up. That means it's working. So that's good. And then just have to zero out a few properties. That's something that's very important to do in general, is just zero out your coordinates. Just a nice, clean way of working with things. So yeah, I think we're in a good place. The only thing we have to do now is a parameter under the effector, the plane effector. We just have to drop it down to maybe negative. Let's go negative. Sure, why not? That looks about right. And we are going to use fields to create the bend. So we can grab our main ricochet object, drop it in here, create it as a spline object. And now we will, down here, when you select the main line, down here you have this window, curve fall off, just add some points. And you can adjust those. So you can start seeing we have a curve, and we can just play around with this. Really, whatever you want it to look like. Another thing is, let's say bare null. And the cool thing too is, like, when you're going around with a null, like, you can see it's hitting only the bare, and it's not going to hit down here. It's going to disappear. So that's a really neat feature of this plugin as well. So all right, so now we have our curve. The same thing here. You can just move it around. So a lot of variations are possible with this plugin. So now we're going to add a whole bunch of webs, if we want to call that, coming out of this line. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use a matrix object. So I used quite a lot of matrix objects on this project. So I'm going to use, so the mode is going to be object. We're going to use our main line for this. So now we see the matrix is being guided along the spline. We're going to change it to loop, so it goes all the way to the spline. And what else? I think that's pretty good. Oh, and we're going to target it to the bear as oh, actually the count. Sorry, the count is going to be even as well. And then we're going to create another ricochet. So let's do another ricochet. This is going to be our second lines. And we are just have to do, again, the object is going to be matrix. And I think, did we drop that in? No, we don't drop that in. We're going to drop the bear in. Link is going to be matrix. Woo, look at that. So much fun. Just a whole bunch of lasers beaming out. So that's fun in itself, cool, like, you know, shooting lasers. We're going to change the same, we're going to do the same thing. So count, we're going to change that to 1. So very nice. It's all, you know, shooting out of from this main spline, so that's what we want. However, we do want to change it up a little bit. So the cool thing about using the matrix is you can adjust it any which way you want. So you know, you have a lot of flexibility, so you can adjust your, you know, make it maybe a little less, maybe this much. So if we, you know, now you have a reduced amount. So if I show this here, anytime you change these properties on your matrix object, it's being affected. The ricochet splines are being affected. So very cool. One thing we do want to do, though, is to add more variation. Right now, they're very direct and not a lot of, variation as there would be, as what makes it more interesting. So to do that, we're going to create not a cloner. We're going to create another a target, first of all. So we're going to target the matrix object. So now that changed, so now it's being not the matrix, the target. It's targeting this element here, and we're actually going to make that a child of our main target, just so everything's nice and neat. And then another thing we want to do is maybe add some random to this, randomization. So let's add our random effector, drop it down if it, so it's all very weird, but that's okay. Because we don't want the position, we only want to affect the rotation. So if we start rotating this, you can see it's starting to spread out a little bit more. So it's giving us that really nice variation. So it's not all aligned in like one axis or anything like that. So it's all spread out. One other thing we want to do maybe is, again, add a little curvature to it. So we will do that the same thing with a plane effector. We can drag and copy it and put it under our second spline. It gets a little funky. That's okay, because it is still being, it's still calling out to the main line, so we just have to change that, drag and drop over that, and now it's more connected. Another thing to remember, obviously, is our spline. We haven't enabled it yet, so we're just going to have to go in and do Bezier, and then subdivide it. And look, it's all nice and neat and curvy and very fun stuff. So again, just a lot of flexibility. You can move this around. You can move your main line around and just create really fun shapes. And you can obviously duplicate this whole set and make many connections, as I've done in this one. So that was that. Let's do a really quick one for the actual web space. So this guy right here. And this was also done with Ricochet. Super easy. Let's create a new folder for this, actually. So again, we can just use a box and a little smaller, and then maybe this as well. And actually, the artist I'm working with is right in the crowd as well. So that's Avina is right there. So that's really fun and exciting to have her here. All right, getting back to this. Let's do this. All right, so we're just creating, I'm just recreating that space that I made. Gonna use the volume builder to cut it out. And then we'll just have this here, subtract. So we have this shape. Gonna lower our voxels a little bit, maybe a little bit more. And probably actually up our segments as well, rotation segments. So it's a little smoother. That looks about right. And then put it all into volume mesher. Nice and easy. This looks great. And that's what we're going to use for our the ricochet. So that's what it's going to be driven by. So click on ricochet, objects, drop this down. Probably a good thing to rename. Nothing happens, and the reason for the fact that nothing happens is because it's not within the geometry. So if you drop it within the actual geo, you can click this button, hide sources, and now you can see that it's within that space. So the cool thing is, we can up our total length. So before we use the count, but here we can do length so that it starts shooting these lasers within that space. We can go, crazy numbers. It doesn't really, it can keep going, going, and going. So we can also change the angle here. So we can, and then, I don't know what, that looks about right. So the random, the way that it's positioned is great. You can have the seat here, so you can just play around with it forever. Sometimes it gets stuck with just like clicking this forever and ever and ever. It's just, I don't know, something about it. But anyways, so that's a shape in a nutshell. What we're going to do now, though, is we're going to make this a geometry. So we can do it in two ways. So we can just hide this guy from view, and we'll add, we can just drop it into a volume builder, which is what I did before. Let's make this 2, make this 2, maybe not, maybe 3, and 3, density 2, something like that, maybe 1. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then we'll just drop that into a volume mesher to get this all meshed. And then we have this really cool, intricate structure. And we can also smooth it out a little bit. So just use your smooth deformer, smoothing right here. Drop that down. And look at that. It created just like a really nice, intricate mesh that you can change live by just going to Ricochet and, you can do this. Or you can say, you know what, I want even more. So I want like maybe, I don't know, some crazy number. Let's see if we can crash the system. Oh, look, it's handling it pretty well. My computer would not be. But yeah, so, really simple but complex, geo you can create, and you can go inside, and it almost looks like medical imagery. So that concludes my first portion, which is the all the rope stuff that I did, and now we can jump on to the next one. So for the last 2.5 years, I was working at a company called Meta. And the projects that I was responsible for were support for large-scale shows such as Connect, which just happened this past week. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do so. It's beautiful. Our vendors did a great job. And there's a lot of really just mind-boggling announcements that make you maybe a little scared for the future. But no, it's all exciting stuff. And did explainer videos for engineer products. So when there's a developer coming out with a new creation of his or hers, they sometimes need our help to interpret it visually for general public. And then social animation posts, so that's when WhatsApp comes out with a dark mode, and we promote that on socials. Visual elements for technical presentations, that's your like basic keynotes, the usual, and internal feature support. So a large variety of different projects, which was really fun to work on. Now, because about 90% of it is under NDA, so I can't show it to you, but there's like a bunch of little pieces I was able to scrap together, so we can take a look at that now. Okay, so that's the stuff that I might be like, oh, that looks cool. And then there is kind of like the everyday work that really pays the bills, like the more utilitarian stuff that I feel like we don't often show, because maybe that's like not the the most like amazing stuff that we've done, but I think it still deserves a space, and so that's that. Okay, so the one I'm going to talk to you about today is the Responsible Innovation campaign that I worked on after we did the 2021 Connect and announced our new name, Meta, and the idea of Metaverse. That we followed it up with kind of keeping the conversation going on Twitter, just being like, hey, we know there's some concerns, and we're addressing it. It's definitely on our minds. So this was a Twitter campaign, just like 5 seconds, 7 seconds. Very quick animations, and we put that out there. It was done internally. My friend Brian C. and I did those, and then we got a really good positive feedback from the stakeholders, so they wanted to do a much bigger, larger campaign. So this is the first one that I did. Just a run through. So received positive feedback. Everybody was like, yeah, this is great. And then, the stakeholders came back and they're like, we want it bigger and better, but you only have 3 weeks to do it. And at first we were like, yeah, I had a producer ask me like, oh, can you do that? I'm like, sure, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. Like a minute each, like 5 minute long, like different. Yeah, I can do that. No, I couldn't do that. So we contacted a company called Laundry. That's a studio. I believe they have offices in San Francisco. Really great. There's great folks to work with. They've done a lot of great stuff with us. We've been working with them for quite some time. So definitely check out their work. And for the kickoff meeting, basically because they also only have 3 weeks, I needed to make sure that I gave them a very clear guidelines to start them off on, so that there wasn't any kind of like a lot of back and forth, which takes up a lot of time. There's like late nights because of that. So like, having worked on the vendor side for so long, I know the frustrations of having to get a brief that's just very abstract and you don't really know what's going on, and you spend a lot of time R&Ding everything. So I was trying to avoid that just because of the amount of time that we were giving them. So for that, I created the brief and the deck. I had 2 days to set that up for our kickoff meeting, and this is a very pared down deck, like super pared down, because I'm trying not to get in trouble. So I don't really, I'm trying to show like only the things I know I can show. So these were the mood boards, so the texture and lighting. This is from Microsoft Spots, which are always beautiful. But I really love the fidelity here, just the texture and the visuals. The shading, the shadows, everything is just really beautiful. So that was for reference for that. The second one was motion reference. Again, just what that's going to look like. Very, very subtle motion. And again, when you're building a deck for either your team or your vendor that you're hiring, give them as much information as possible. It's always really good to that's why I use GIFs. I don't. Stills only can explain so much, and words can only explain so much. So if you can add, just I grabbed this from somewhere and I just put it in. This one I build myself. So it's a really good visual language to start the conversation going. So for this one, again, as a director, it's also really good to just know a little bit of Cinema 4D, just so you can go in there and just roughly do these really quick animations. They don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be amazing, but they explain what you're looking for. So this is something I built quickly to show hey, more organic way of the shapes coming on. So here's a notes on the introduction video of how I'm imagining things will built on. This is, again, still for introduction. This is obviously not a very pretty frame. It's very rough, but it gives an idea of what these shapes are going to do. So as much information you can give, the more successful the project will be in the long run. Because I've worked, at the beginning of my career, I worked with a lot of directors who didn't really know what they wanted, and it took a lot of time, which is great because you build a relationship that way, and you're trying to get into their head. And if you have time to do that, that's great. But if you don't have the time, it gets a little frustrating. So I was trying to avoid that happening in this project. So set this up again really quickly for the privacy video. Again, when you're dealing with very abstract concepts like privacy, like what does that look like? And that's another thing. A lot of times when you're working in tech, these things are very abstract, and you have to illustrate them, and you have to find clever ways of illustrating that. So knowing cinema and like going in there and like figuring out, okay, well, privacy, it could be like multiple layers. So my idea for this was Russian nesting dolls. So there's multiple layers of privacy controls that we can add, and this is how visual is represented. And if you also can figure those problems out before you have, when you have your kickoff meeting, then it paves the way for the vendor to focus more on animation and making it visually beautiful and stunning, as opposed to like going back and forth being like, is this what you're looking for? So for those two frames, for privacy, it was super simple. Not a lot going on there. It's just a cube. I can call it small and a large. And all it is they're blended together. And under a cloner object, the mode for clones is blend. So usually the default is iterate. So you can see that's not doing anything. But the moment you're putting it under blend, then you can create a more internal complexity. So you can go up and you can see what's happening here. We can do a quick redshift render. Let's see how long that's going to take. Oh, not bad. So I used just a glass texture on this. So there's a glass texture, cloner, and blend. So that's just, again, see, it's like slowing down. If we go down, we can see it's changing and it's looking great. And again, this is simple, but I find sometimes simple is even harder to do than like very complex things that you just throw stuff at. But if you know cinema on a very basic level, it's still really great and helpful for your team or your vendor if you're working with a vendor. So yeah, and the same thing with this guy here as well. It's the same technique. It's just two tubes, and they are blended between each other, different size. So again, using the same principle basically, and the slice. There's a different slice on these to jump between each other. So if we up this, we can see it's changing because there is also a random effector. This looks kind of cool too, but there's a random effector spreading this out in Z, and we can go into our random effector and we can go into scene and just change it up a little bit. Like that actually looks kind of cool too. So yeah, so that is that part. Let's go back again. Like I said, I only had like 2 days to build this whole deck out. So these were very rough. Also images, GIFs for illustrating economic opportunity. Again, very abstract concept, but I was thinking like everything's moving up, right? And economic opportunities all should just go, everything should raise up. So that was a little more, like this one is pretty simple. This one was just, again, cloner, a bunch of objects, and they are guided by the helix over here. So the helix is what's causing them to go along the spline. And the helix is also guiding the animation. So as opposed to any other types of ways to animate this, I just used the helix to bring this up, just because it also gives a rotation, like a really nice rotation, so it can give you like a really nice flow without being too jarring, and that's something I was trying to prevent doing. These guys were a little more complicated for absolutely no reason, but that's the beauty of working in 3D and Cinema 4D, is that there's like millions of ways to do the same thing, and sometimes you take the more difficult road. So these guys are all dynamic objects, and they are being driven by a plane effector. So the plane effector has Y. So if I turn this off, so the Y is 131, and that is there's a fields, and the fields is what's causing it to raise up. And there was no need to make it a dynamic object, but I don't know, sometimes I'm like, this is the way to do it. But it was fine. It made it work, and it works. It works. So, and then for the inclusion, that is the final video. That's when everything kind of comes together. So I created 8 of these different scenes, basically just giving a vendor an idea of these are kind of how all these primitive shapes can come together. But I only included 3 frames from that. Yeah. So again, basic knowledge of cinema will help you as a director to illustrate your idea a lot better and explain your idea a lot better in the long run, so that there won't be any kind of confusions and back and forth and things like that. So which always costs money, and you want everybody to be happy. So Laundry did an amazing job after our initial meeting. They took all that information, and this is a very extreme cut down from the result from that, because again, each video is a minute long. So I just took the portions that were the best portions I thought were the best. Cool. So again, the fidelity here is really great. I don't know if you can really see it, but they did an amazing job. It's just in texturing and lighting all of this. And if you have everything figured out, then you're giving them the time to develop this and to create these beautiful renders, because all the more intricate things that do take a lot of time has been already solved. All right, so then that concludes my presentation. I'm just going to jump to the last page that says thank you. Sorry, guys. Never mind. You're not going to get that. Sorry. Thanks. All right, hope you got something out of this.
Thank you, Julia. Always a pleasure to have you. We do have time for a couple questions before our next presenter. But before we get started on that, remember to get your badge scanned, for those of you who've got badges. And if you didn't, if you got a wristband, that's fine. Just get your badge the next day or whatever the case may be and get scanned. We're going to be giving away an amazing Dell laptop as well as a Sense tablet next week for everybody who gets scans. Registers online, so if you're online, register as well. And if you're at Adobe Max, too. I have our whole training team there as well. So, questions for Julia from the live audience first. Sorry, Internet, you get secondary. I know, but she's here. They're here. All right, so any questions for Julia on anything? We did have one from the Internet then. Fine, Internet, you're first. Here we go. Internet question was, can you talk about how did you start working with Meta?
They reached out to me, and I was very interested in VR and AR and just emerging technologies in general, so I was very excited to get a call from them, and that was it. I mean, they found me, and I'm glad they did.
So get found. Do interesting things, and then get found, and that's it.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our live audience right here? Yeah, great question. So the question is, how did you get started in all this?
I went to I majored in 3D animation, and then I did my MFA at SCAD for computer art. So, and then it just kind of like led me onto that path. But I think, if you're interested, you don't really. I mean, obviously, college is a great way to start, but you can also just start putting out work on Instagram, or and just creating. Really, it's just like all about just creating and putting it out there, and there's a lot of demand for what we do, which is great. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of resources now too that even 5-7 years ago they weren't there. So Cineversity, if you're on the 3D motion show, like you get scanned, we'll send you all that information. We have trainings going on like every week, so you can just stay up to date. Take a look at actually Julia's years ago. She's been presenting with us for over the course of years. So there's a lot that you can just get caught up on and start building and finding your own style. That'll be yeah, awesome. Cool. All right, let's hear another round of applause for Julia. And up next will be EJ Hassenfratz. So stay tuned. We'll be getting rolling here in about 8 minutes. All right. See you then.